Okay, awesome. Welcome to the second video, the second session of Strat Something New, a property that has been clearly made because two planners came up with a name that they were proud of and needed to do something with it, I guess. Those of you joining in for the first time, we really don't know what this series is. Last time it was just Aditya and me talking for a good 1.5, 2 hours about the changing role of digital for brands. That was actually quite a nice discussion. I enjoyed that and got a lot of nice comments as well from people coming in. And today we are taking a completely different topic. One of the things that we ended up last session talking about was it is possible to learn digital or marketing from anywhere, from any, and start with your passion points because you are likely to be a big fan of football or fashion or music or whatever the case may be. Aditya and I are both big fans of rock music, and I made an offhand statement just saying, yeah, I mean, you can learn a lot of digital marketing just looking at what you know some artists have done and things like that. And I said, okay, why don't we just convert that into the next session? And that's what we've done. We've got about 15, 20 nice examples of what bands around the world have done. And hopefully, we have a few marketing takeaways from there. For those of you who don't know who we are, Aditya and I are both Mycans and planners, a well-worn path, I think. I am a marketing and content freelancer who can now successfully make a cheesecake in Bombay. And Adi,
I am a strategist with DDB. I work out of their Delhi office, North office, and I typically handle brand strategy for mainline and digital clients, which is like that intersection is pretty interesting of mainline clients going digital and digital clients just wanting to solidify and entrench themselves further. That's what I do. I would like to say it's Monday to Friday, but it's not.
yesterday somebody said they wanted to join in for the session, but their working hours were Monday to Sunday, uh, 12 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. And I said, well, at least they give you an hour, at least they give you a minute off. So let's start. Thanks for joining in. Just a quick. There are about 10 people over here. So of the 10 people over here, how many of you are fans of rock music in some shape or form? Not that it really matters. Not that it's going to change. Because we are actually taken the liberty to use a lot of non-rock music examples. Really, so it's not like everything is type of stuff. Wow, just 2 out of 10. All right, we have 3 out of 10. Right, interesting actually. More so people clearly have joined in more for the marketing or for our charm, Adityan, rather than for rock music itself. So unlike last time, we are very keen on sticking to time. So
Yes, we'll be ferociously on time,
yeah,
hopefully.
ferociously on time is something that planners are typically very bad at, but we will take a stab at it. Just give me a confirmation, everyone who is attending, if you can see a slide that says marketing lessons from the world of rock music. If you just give me a thumbs up or something, um, thumbs up or high five or whatever it is. All right, excellent. Thanks so much. So what we're going to do is we're just going to share some interesting things that bands or artists have done, and possible takeaway for uh, brands from there. The idea really is to say, all right, these are the marketing lessons that you can take from this particular example, and it's really that. And then at the end, we hope that you get inspired and think about your own passion space, be it rock music or whatever else it is, and say, hey, okay, there are some lessons that we can learn from here and extrapolate that to
Yeah.
even a BFSI company or a real estate brand or something. So without further ado, Adi, shall we get started?
Let us get started. Yes.
Excellent. The first example that we have, so we'll take turns. I had about 6 or 7 examples. Aditya had about 6 or 7 examples. So we'll just keep alternating between us. There's no particular theme or way in which we have laid this out, just basically one example after the other, staccato like that. The first example I have is actually one of the most spectacular uses I've seen. Metallica, the legendary rock slash metal band, depending on your point of view, uses local Spotify data to build city specific set lists. So during the 2017 tour, I think this was, the band worked with Spotify to figure out which were the songs that were most famous in or the most listened to or streamed to in particular cities around the US. And then they would base that city's set list, as in the songs that they would be playing during the show, basis that. Now, to be fair, these don't vary too often because Metallica is a band where if you ask any random sample around the world what their top 10 songs were, it's likely that 9 out of 10 are going to be same, be it San Francisco, be it London, or be it Bangalore for that matter. But the concept itself was pretty nice. And what I particularly like about this is one, it's a very clever, intelligent use of data. I think is definitely a headline driver, and this coming from a band that famously started the millennium as Luddites. In 2000, Adi, I don't know if you remember, but that was the time Napster was a big thing. The whole MP3 piracy thing was a big thing, and Metallica just didn't understand. They didn't understand what this whole thing was. They sued Napster. They tried to sue the people using Napster. And everyone's like, dude, like, what are you doing? Do you even understand this thing called the internet? But they've really got a lot of digital chops right now, and apart from stuff like this, they do a whole bunch of other things. They are yet to this day the only band that I've seen that makes every show that they perform available for an MP3 download after you pay them. I think that's a great way of making in more revenue from the show itself. A little bit of our little marketing takeaways from here. So every example is going to be like, I'm going to show you what it is, and then the takeaway that hopefully any brand, any sector can take. So I think each company, especially ones operating in a digital space, sits on a trove of data, be it internal data, be it external data. It's interesting that in this particular example, Metallica actually used data that is technically external, right? They don't own the Spotify data per se, but I'd like to think each company, each sector sits on a trove of data, which can actually be used in pretty interesting ways. This can act as either a base for creating content, like Spotify's year-end wrap-up thing, or when Zomato always does that. This is the city that tips the most, or here is the food item that's ordered the most, etc. Or even to maybe drive new products or services. If you can look at the data, interestingly enough, see who is spending time where. Yeah, I think it opens up avenues for thinking of new types of products and services that can be created. I think learning to read data, interpret it, and create something actionable out of it will be a key skill for anyone working in. Will be a very very valuable skill rather over the next decade.
And just a quick note, what's really interesting about this as well is that it's not restricted to any kind of company. A lot of people think that I have to be a new age tech savvy whatever ish company to use data really well. Metallica started early 1980s.
Yeah.
One of the few bands who can actually pull this off. So any brand out there, no matter how dated they are, how old they are, how historic they are,
Yeah.
they've definitely got a lot of room to use data in an interesting ways.
Yeah. And it's not really about the amount of data that you have, right? It could be just two data points that you have that you just mix together and make sense. At the same time, just having a lot of data doesn't mean you're necessarily data savvy in that sense. I'm sure, Adi, you and I have been to enough presentations where we've seen reams and reams of numbers being presented that really don't mean anything. Like one of the best planners that I have worked with, uh, I think she was very good at. Uh, I don't think she ever used graphs or anything before the creative slides. Which how many planners can we say that about really? She'd make a big, huge point. In the bottom, there would be that one line of the stat that supports it, either proprietary research or be it the third party or something like that. And I think that's an important point. I think sometimes as planners we get too caught up in the process of creating, like, oh, how many people did you survey? Where did you source this data from? At the end of the day, you're telling a story, and let's face it, many times we know what we are going towards, and it's about finding that right narrative and supporting it with the right stats rather than saying that, hey, look, we did a whole bunch of data analysis. Anything else, Adi, you want to add on this, or we'll move on to the next example?
Let's let's move on to the next one.
Let's move on quickly. Otherwise, we'll end up rambling and talking either about Metallica, data, or both. The next example is yours, and it's an interesting one. It doesn't come from the world of rock music, but it's one of the biggest things that happened in the virtual world in music over the last few years. So, Adi, take it away.
Yeah, so a lot of us know Marshmello, some of us don't know Marshmello, but just quickly, Marshmello is a huge EDM artist, and what's really interesting about what he did is that Fortnite is one of the world's most popular games, and he had a concert within Fortnite. So it was completely virtual. It was all AR, and he played about a 10-minute set with people who were on Fortnite there, and of course, a lot of people were watching, streaming in, and it was really, really cool. And just as a first step that people can do, it looked great. It looked like an EDM concert, and the more you want to push this, I mean, look at that. I don't think you can replicate that kind of look on ground, which is what makes this kind of thing crazy, that you're literally just limited by your imagination. You can have whatever you want, wherever you want. We've got a couple of examples where people have used AR and VR very interestingly, and they really pushed the boundaries on how you can bring the concert experience alive.
Yeah.
And what's super interesting and super cool about this is the kind of intersection, number one, of music and gaming. uh, when you think about it, gaming has a lot of music to it. Those tracks become really, really famous, and typically some games actually become recognized by the kind of music that they have,
Yeah.
whether it's Rockstar games with GTA launches or anything like that. But here, what I found super interesting about this, and Chuck, if you move to the next slide, please, is that there's a very interesting way that they've tried to build their presence in subculture. Now, gaming is one thing that's coming up all over the world. You can choose to not be a part of it, but I read this report that said that most of Indian gamers, about 60% of them are below 25, and increasingly what we're seeing is that that's what's driving a lot of brands business. So for anybody who's got a young cohort, that's driving your brand's business, number one. Number two, people who are in tier 2, tier 3 markets, because a large part of gaming in India also is coming from mobile gamers.
Yeah.
You don't need PCs, you don't need consoles. Those are expensive. Today, everybody can afford a smartphone. 5,000 रुपए में आपको smartphone मिल जाएगा. You're on games like PUBG and everything. And if tier 2, tier 3, below 25 is what's driving growth for you, then gaming might be one of the things to look at. You may choose not to do it, but it's great to see how you go from subculture to pop culture to mass culture, and you really want to enter the story.
Yeah.
And secondly, what I've just mentioned is that find the interesting overlaps that exist within gaming and EDM. Off the top of your head, it's like kuch nahi ho sakta. But when you put these together in an interesting way like this, and tech is just an enabler to it. VR isn't the story. The experience is the story.
Yeah.
That kind of overlaps. That's what really makes us interesting.
Yeah. No, well said. And there are so many other takeaways that you can have from this. The example alone, like that, in a way, I mean, if you look at it in isolation, that's a great way of looking at the future of entertainment could be like this, right? Whether or not you like EDM or not, that's really not the point over here. But in many ways, and it's interesting that this actually happened, I think, 2 years before the pandemic. Actually, either 2018 or 2019 was when this happened, and then subsequently it's been replicated by others. Famously, Travis Scott last year got about 25 or 27 million people attending his virtual concert. The trailer for Tenet was for the first time released inside Fortnite. Even though Christopher Nolan is being a Luddite and not releasing it to streaming platform, but that's another story for another. Interestingly enough, the streaming platform that is on right now is Book My Show. That's another weird. That's another weird story for another day. It's interesting how they've pivoted. And there are several other things over here, right? I mean, if you draw a parallel with all the streaming concerts that are happening right now, which I am a big fan, all these virtual concerts that are happening. Like right now, the way it happens is you have a bunch of cameras connected to the internet that are trained on the artists themselves. Indeed, Metallica themselves did a very good one recently. But stuff like this takes it to another plane altogether. Making it virtual, having maybe different fan experiences depending on pricing tiers and things like that. I think it's fascinating. I think the future of entertainment, add that along with this whole NFT craze that's happening right now, where experiences on the blockchain, I don't know, this whole thing sounds very exciting to me. And we're speaking about just music over here. Imagine virtual travel or conferences. During the lockdown, it was very interesting that there were bummed out college kids from all over the world who realized that they wouldn't be able to graduate properly. They recreated their entire college in Minecraft and they attended
Yes. Yeah.
virtual sort of things. It's amazing. Like I think there's a lot that's going to happen in the space, and just to dismiss this as a electronic musician doing a show in a video game, I think would be the wrong takeaway from something. I think this is the. I think people will look back at this moment, just like how we now look back at some iconic moments of advertising, or say Steve Jobs unveiling the iPhone in 2007 and saying that started something, but we didn't know it then. I think people will look back at this moment as
And
something that changed entertainment.
in actual concerts, your the pricing of the ticket, and you're going to get into ticket pricing and stuff like that in just
Yeah,
a
yeah,
couple. But here, if you look at it, you normally concert में क्या होता है? You've got ticket pricing basis how close you are to the stage in
yeah,
order to book everything in, and the farther your seats away, the
yeah,
cheaper the tickets are. And बिल्कुल पीछे तो they're pretty much
yeah,
scam tickets. But here, when you have a concert like this, how you're going to price your tickets, and um, what is the benefit that you get of paying extra or paying a premium can be completely different. Like what Chuck was mentioning, Abhi,
mm,
for example, one of the cameras could be on stage, and if you want to take in that experience from the perspective of the musician rather than being in the audience, that's something you can switch to. So
yeah,
how do you control the experience and relate that to the pricing tier, rather than like when you have the opportunity to do so, rather than just going back to the staid traditional way of concerts as to
yeah,
the distance on the stage and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. Another takeaway that I just have before we move on from here is that this is a fantastic use case for virtual reality by itself. VR as a tech has been something that's been tossed around for a long time, and nobody's really found a proper use case for it beyond, of course, the gaming and all that. As a result of which, at one end, you have these cheap Google cardboards that are just, a decent way to watch a 360 video on YouTube at best. And at the very end, at the other end, you have an Oculus Rift that gives you, that's super expensive and has immersive experiences that you can buy from certain websites and marketplaces and things like that. Nothing really in the middle. I think over the next few years, VR is going to become a lot more mainstream than it is right now. And the prices of a good device, like Adi, you said right now, a person can pick up a 5,000 rupees smartphone and actually play a game like Fortnite, a heavy game like Fortnite pretty easily on that. I think we're going to move to a future like that. The technology gets better. Facebook is investing a lot in making VR more accessible, and they definitely have an ulterior motive behind doing that. And right now, is gaming. There's some part of there's some part of education that's becoming virtual. But let's face it. Otherwise, it's mostly a gimmick used by marketers to write to get case study entries. But I think as entertainment and travel maybe even becomes more mainstream with respect to VR, I think that's going to be an interesting future. Yeah, let's move on to the next thing that we have. Divya actually brought up a very nice point. The proto version of the Oasis from Ready Player One, that is technically, yeah, I think it's amazing how a lot of science fiction is actually coming true right now. Except that elusive flying car from the Jetsons. I think that I don't think we'll ever see. Like we are more likely. I think people are likely to. We are more likely to get the Flintstones car, self-driving car, self-running car before that. All right, what do we have next? The next thing I have is, oh yes, this is something that, so I love it when a brand or anyone really goes against the has to, I mean, this is the way marketing has to be done. Sort of things. I've never really, I mean, no marketing never really has any rules. And whenever there is like, oh, these are the 10 best practices that you should follow on social media in order to create buzz, no, not really. No, the platforms really haven't said anything like that. And as humans, I think we enjoy and are attracted to things that are slightly unusual, right? Not things that are necessarily better. And this happened a few years back in 2016 when Radiohead, who we will speak about a little later as well, before they released their album, I think it was that Moonwala album. I forget the name of the album. They deleted all their social media, and that act got became viral. So it's kind of weird that their most viral social media activity was not a post, but the act of them deleting their entire social media. Right now, that seemed crazy, but then that's the thing, right? Crazy ideas are really that's they make you go, whoa. My old boss used to say, uh, he knows he's heard a good idea when he starts feeling uncomfortable, and I think that's a great way of thinking of an idea like this. Marketing takeaway: one of conventional things on social media are likely to get way more buzz than doing a good job day in and day out. Nobody would have cared about what Radiohead was posting, apart from their hardcore fans, of course. But the moment they go and do something like this, it really started to it really started to get picked up. And I think no ideas off the table really, especially when it comes to a medium like social media. See, if you need to succeed on social media, you need to like. I think you have to do something unusual. Otherwise, trying to just perfect the content calendar strategy and all that, which I have ranted about many times before. So I will not do that again. But I think I do. I think no idea is off the table really. Look at what Wendy is doing, for example, on Twitter. Look at the crazy amount of things that they're doing, breaking pretty much every rule book that exists with respect to marketing. So yeah, that's my takeaway from here. Adi, you want to add anything, or we will?
No, I quite like this. I think what I love about this the most is that it's really simple.
Yeah,
You don't have to have really complicated ideas.
yeah.
Good ideas don't require big budgets.
Yeah, yeah. I was just reminded of another idea when I saw this, which I was thinking of what other ideas may became social media viral without actually doing social media like this. There's this sports car from Fiat called the Abarth. I don't know if you've heard of it. Abarth. It's Fiat sports variant. And their whole thing was we are so fast that nobody can catch us or nobody can follow us. So what did they do on Twitter? They blocked people from following them, and that's it. That's it. They didn't do anything else. They just blocked people from following, and that simple act became viral. Yeah, so I think these things are pretty interesting. Let's move on to the next thing. Adi, you have something for us, which is from the happy world of Bacardi and
Yes.
Vicky Malhotra, a face that I was not expecting to see in a rock music session, but you have
Definitely. And I love I I won't say I love white rum, but some white rum is really good. Of the white rum that is good, Bacardi is generally at the top. And more than anything else, it's just a brand with so much recall. Right? People remember the songs, people remember the ads, and this time what they did is
So remember the music festival,
yeah,
importantly.
yeah, yeah, exactly, and just phenomenal, really really good branding. Ah, nice.
The weekender plug up.
A really good branding, and this is a very cool intersection of again music and comedy.
Some people might not be aware of what the activity is. Adi, you just want to
Yeah.
do it?
Okay. So what Bacardi did was they launched these house party sessions where they got Tanmay Bhatt, Nuclear, and Vicky here to just ask for entries for the new DJ. And they did this in the most wild, wacky ways over a couple of years. And uh, one of the winners of this competition was actually Ritviz, and that's how he absolutely just shot to fame.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, Sarah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, there are some interesting questions coming. I think we should just finish this for the sake of hygiene and then we'll.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Come
And
on. Yeah.
when you go through this, it's really even the ads or just the call to submit entries, just talking about it, popularizing it. It's just such great fun content to consume. I don't feel like I'm watching an ad or an entry to a competition. That is, of course, fact that it's got AIB, Bacardi behind it. But
Yeah.
even the way it's shot, there is no dearth of branding. I think that's one of the concerns that brand managers, कि मेरा brand खो जाएगा इसमें.
Hmm.
They made sure to keep that essence of branding, notwithstanding that bottle in your face on the table. But very interesting content, supremely on brand.
Yeah.
And if you go to the next slide,
Yeah. Sorry. What?
really,
Huh.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
What's interesting is that both of these, comedy and music, have huge communities, and both of these communities are constantly churning out new content, fresh content. So you don't always have to create as a brand your own content. You can tap into the content that's already existing in your communities. It's not just a way to build UGC or reach out to your communities, create that feeling, but actually make sure that your community also has a presence beyond the PPT and marketing slides that you see.
100%.
And I think, yeah, the best thing to do, especially because it's an alcohol brand and there are so many tight regulations around it, the more people you can get to talk about your brand, or the more ways you can get people to talk about your brand, the better it is.
Yeah, yeah,
Because of this kind of media asphyxiation that goes across the alcobev category, people resort to surrogate marketing or cultural marketing.
mm,
This is a great way of cultural marketing. You don't have any surrogates. You don't need any surrogates here.
yeah,
You're using culture to propagate your brand, and that's a great marketing strategy.
yeah. What I really like about this from a content marketing point of view is even though the brand is very explicitly there, right? There's no hiding the fact that this is from Bacardi. It's very clearly promotional content for Bacardi. It still feels entertaining, which kind of like makes me kind of realize that people are okay if a brand is shoved in their face. They just don't want a sanitized message, you know. They don't want a sort of like, oh, the Tanmay could have been funnier, but the brand manager didn't allow him to say these few things. No, it's not about that. Like, let him do whatever he wants, and consumers will be, or viewers rather, I keep saying consumers like a planner, viewers will be okay tolerating whatever brand stuff. In fact, some of the best brand integrations with this sort of these comedians type of content is when it is hilariously over the top and explicit. When they break the fourth wall and they turn to the camera and then say, that was obviously a sponsor plug. And then they get back into the scene. I find things like that pretty interesting. Bacardi's done a great job of this, and I may come across as an OML stan over here, but I think the work that they've done for content marketing for Bacardi is spectacular. Adi, don't know if you know, but this idea was so successful in India, they're actually replicating it in other markets in Southeast Asia.
Oh, that's nice. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I built the landing page for the Philippines. Version of exactly the same thing. They got the local version of whatever Vicky Malhotra or Ritviz or whatever over there. Submit your videos over here, stuff like that. Exact same activity. They have an
Right.
entire team that sort of does it. So fantastic. I think Bacardi is going to be a brand to watch out for purely because of these kind of things. What they do exactly this, Adi, by the way, they build communities, create content in specific markets around the world. Some parts of Europe, South Africa, and some parts of Southeast Asia as well. Yeah, I think I'm contractually bound to plug Bacardi and OML. All right. What do we have next? Pricing tiers for live streamed concerts is something that I have been fascinated by. So I have been attending a lot of virtual concerts. Some are good, some are some are not all that great. But to me, the best examples of virtual concerts are not when it's just a camera and then people perform, but when you give an actual digital experience. That way, Metallica's show, for instance, was fantastic. You had people there, you had photos of videos of people streaming in from around the world surrounding the band as they played. But it also opens up other opportunities. For example, I've seen live stream concerts. Here's the Metallica's pricing thing, where you can get only the audio for $10, which is you don't even attend the concert. Then you have the standard ticket, which I bought, which was I think $20 or something like that. Then you have you have a tier on top of that, and then you have a tier on top of that. Actually, this was a screenshot from yesterday, so it obviously doesn't reflect a few things. There were other things like if you want to be featured on that wall, then you could pay a little more. And I've also seen other shows, for example, here I couldn't find another screenshot, so this is a slightly ugly Facebook post that I have from one of my favorite metal bands, Leprous. Terrible name, but a great band. Like a €10 ticket will allow you to watch the show, and a €40 ticket will allow you to hang out with the band on Zoom. Now, €40 honestly is not a whole lot for a person who is an actual fan, who might be a big fan of the band, because your regular VIP experiences that happen on ground tend to be like at least 10 times that, for example. And this, I think, makes it very interesting. So while Leprous over here had two tiers, I think in the future this could open up and become a whole bunch of other things. Say you have one tier which is on one camera. You have a slightly advanced tier where, like Adi said, for Fortnite, you choose between cameras that you want to watch, the ability to say focus on the guitarist over the drummer, for instance, or maybe even get a higher quality stream of audio. For instance, the another tier allows you to hang out with the band. Another tier maybe allows you to do a one-on-one with the band. I think there are all sorts of possibilities that are there for something else, as long as the experience is built kind of like for digital. Again, add that complication of all this NFT stuff that's happening on top of this, and you possibly have unlocked a very, very rich universe. So I think this whole pricing tiers, I think, is something interesting that's starting off with live music. But I think if a brand were to look at it, it might be seems here. How can a brand kind of take a lesson away from this. But I think it's also shows a direction for monetizing existing content. A couple of examples I'll give you over here. So I am always looking for examples of brands or companies that have found alternate revenue streams apart from the thing that they actually sell. These examples are very, very few and far between, but I managed to find like Nike, for instance, they get most of their money obviously selling athletic wear and all that. A couple of years back, they started this thing called the Nike Training Club, NTC, where you are paying for a service, you are paying for content. Now that sounds interesting. Right? Usually brands use content as a part of their marketing. A brand like Nike would make 10 fitness videos and upload it on YouTube and say, hey, listen, we are thought leaders with respect to home fitness. Watch the video, hence have a nicer opinion of Nike and buy your shoes next time you go to a mall or need a shoe. But over here, they are very distinct saying, no, we are experts in the space and we value this and you're going to pay us in order to access this content, which I thought was kind of interesting. Because they weren't creating a separate product. They were taking content and putting that behind a paywall, which I thought was interesting. And that became the Nike Training Club. During the time of the virus, they suspended the payment, so it's all free. Fender did the same thing. Fender guitars did the same thing on their app, Fender Play. So I think this is interesting. Like for example, think that a lot of companies have a lot of expertise that they don't monetize. What stops an HDFC or an ICICI bank from starting a finance course tomorrow, for instance? They have the name for it. They have definitely have the expertise for it. I think something like that would be pretty cool. I've seen a free course that Schneider Electric, of all companies, has been putting out. These guys, what's that Martech company? HubSpot. HubSpot has a few paid courses for SEO and things like that. I think all these are great. I think monetizing expertise beyond just the product or service that you are primarily selling, I think that's a big opportunity for companies going forward. Not everybody will do it, but I think you have mass content that takes care of your content marketing, and you might have a certain set of people who are willing to pay for a certain thing. And your biggest fans who will probably deserve special treatment and will be willing to pay a lot more. So that's my little takeaway from this.
Yeah, and the thing is that it's always your biggest fans. Like I don't remember who this quote is from, but he said that it's always better to be loved by a few people than liked by a lot. So cater to those few people who love you and who you think is their absolute ideal target market, and the rest of things will fall into place.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
There's so much to like about Nike as a content creator,
Yeah.
as people who, like you said rightly, they can easily make it available for free. Be like, I'm a thought leader, buy my shoes.
Yeah.
But just putting that behind a paywall adds a little something else, like
Yeah.
it's just a different dimension to their content. And
Yeah.
as a brand, I think Nike's always been ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
The recent D2C craze happened over the past year and a half, but Nike had suspended everything, I think, 4 or 5 years ago.
On Amazon, right?
Yeah. And they said that, we'll shut retail shops, we'll bring all delivery or large amount of delivery in-house.
Yeah.
And at that point, everybody had said that their CEO, John Donner, he was absolutely
Yeah.
crazy. But they reaped dividends like mad throughout the pandemic. So
yeah, absolutely. Adi, I think I found the topic for our next session, since they always tend to come up during these sessions, which is, and this is something I have been thinking a lot about recently, uh, is branding seeing a resurgence of late? Like there used to be this time when branding was very important in the mid 70s and 80s purely to stand out because there was only mass media. But then along came the internet. You would go to Google and you would search for shoes and you'd get the first thing. You'd check reviews and all that. Like Scott Galloway once said, your favorite brand now is what Google and Facebook tells you is your favorite brand. Which I thought there was a lot of wisdom for that. But right now we're seeing, I think this anti-Amazon, anti-big platform sort of thing, which means building a big brand is more important than ever before. Like Nike can afford to do that because they'll be confident enough that people will go to Nike.com and buy their shoes rather than be like if you're a company that doesn't have a strong brand and if you go to if you then you are beholden to Amazon and its algorithm because you're optimizing for that, right? So I think that's something for us to think about. I think that'll be a very interesting.
That's actually quite cool. Without taking up too much time right now, I think in a world where like, product is parity, branding is going to be the biggest differentiator.
Yeah. Okay. All the questions that are coming in, we'll try to take them towards the end. As in, we will take them towards the end. We just want to make sure we finish this on time. So, are there anything else that you want to add on this? No?
Good
Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next one, which I also believe is
pricing.
pricing tier based. And we have Taylor Swift.
So Taylor Swift doesn't get, I mean, it doesn't get as far from rock music than Taylor Swift, but this woman is phenomenal, has a phenomenal business mind.
Yeah.
And when I was just going through a couple of articles, uh, it's not always the A&R recorders, it's not always the business people on the label side who are driving these decisions. More often than not, it comes from her brains.
Yeah.
I thought this was absolutely killer. Some musicians have tried to do this in some way or form over a very long period of time, but she's actually perfected it. You know, in a world where there are pricing tiers, she said, "Why don't I just make my pricing dynamic?
Yeah.
Let me do it like airlines."
That's it.
And what's great about this, and I happen to think it's a brilliant business strategy.
Yeah.
I don't think it slows demand for two reasons. Number one, it makes your tickets that much more valuable. It makes your artistry and it makes the experience of a concert that much more valuable.
Yeah.
But simply over the longer term, this is a pricing strategy that's going to make sure that you don't fall with the market.
Yeah.
Whenever anybody is trying to give deep discounts, platforms are using investors' money to give you those codes, coupon codes, which is
Mm.
essentially you're just increasing your burn rate
Yeah.
as a kind of company. She's here and she's simply saying that over the long period of time, I'm not going to be dropping down my rates. Now, some people who are going and buying Taylor Swift's and a couple of other artists' tickets, they feel a little shortchanged because they feel like, "Arey, man, I paid $800 for this ticket,
Yeah.
but today it's available for $300 or $400."
Mm.
That's exactly how airlines started off when they went through dynamic pricing. That's exactly what happened when IRCTC started dynamic pricing. That's the nature of the game when
Yeah.
it comes to dynamic pricing. But I do think this is the future of the industry. And just in terms of how you can manage your pricing, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Somebody said that if you sell out your tickets too quickly, you've done something wrong.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And I think this is also, I mean, the other thing that, the other unsaid thing over here also is that this is in a way a response to all the, I mean, we don't see it in India that much, but in the West, reselling and all that is a big issue, right? Where you have bots that, sophisticated bots that end up buying these tickets on the cheap and then reselling them in any case
Yeah.
on your third party platforms. And that's a huge issue that the entire industry in the West has been grappling with for such a long time, and something like this actually, in a way, kind of effectively stopped that. I think this is fantastic. Like I've often admire, like I'm not a huge fan of Taylor Swift's music per se, but that's only because of my tastes, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think she has, like you're right, she has a brilliant business mind.
Does.
I think like she's very smart about how she goes about these things, and I thoroughly admire her for stuff like that. So fully. Like I fully support your decision to keep this in a session, even though it was supposed to be around rock music. That being
Yeah.
said, I think she's also a good rock musician by herself. Did she do a couple of Metallica covers or something, or am I thinking of somebody else?
We've got a couple of others floating around, and then
I'm
a
thinking,
couple of them are really nice.
I'm thinking of Lady Gaga. Sorry, I got my pop divas mixed up. Yeah,
Touch a little deeper on what you said, Abhi. Scalp tickets are really, really big, and the one company that really nailed it was StubHub.
yeah.
They used to buy tickets and scalp them on eBay
Mm-hmm.
immediately worth 4 or 5 times. And because this was all algorithm driven, they
Yeah,
used to buy bulk of tickets and then go sell it.
yeah,
This takes care of something like that because I think this was all driven by Ticketmaster anyway.
yeah,
There's no way you can scalp tickets through
yeah,
this.
yeah. No, fantastic. Shall we get into the takeaways?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think largely,
You mentioned this already.
yeah.
Anything else on this? Yeah. Build excitement, FOMO. Yeah. No,
I
make
can't
sense.
see
Yeah.
anything on my,
Sorry,
I can't see anything on my screen.
you can't. That's strange. I can. Is anyone else facing this issue? Because I have everything over here. Marketing takeaway, long time pricing. Anyone who's watching this, if you can, we can see,
Cool.
confirm Suchita. Yeah.
Now I can see the 2 points as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Anything else you want to add, Hadi?
I'm good. Let's
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's move on. How are we doing for time, by the way? Okay, not too bad, but I easily miss our 12 p.m. Thing. All right, so this is an example that I have actually, and I think this might answer somebody. No, actually, it might not answer. Somebody had asked this on Q&A. this one. So I've been a huge fan of Warren Mendonça, aka Black Sweat Blues, aka the guitarist for Zero, aka I mean now producer for a whole way. I mean you can go on and on. Like I probably have like there's a Black Sweat Blues poster over there. There's stuff all over. Like I have at least three set lists that are signed and posted up all over the place. I'm a huge fan of this guy. I think he's India's finest guitar player. Uh, but then I also think that he uses social media very well. Now, I don't consider him a whiz or something, and I'm pretty sure if I were to show him this slide right now, saying that I use this in a session of great rock music example, I'm sure he would laugh at me, saying like, why would you do that? But I think he's done a few things right. He's like, if you take a step back and see, so okay, I'll just mention what he does on his Instagram, for instance. He during the lockdown, almost every day he's done like this half an hour to 45-minute live video where he just plays, right? He just plays very, very random things and it's beautiful to watch. And once in a while, like you see on your left, he does Q&As and they tend to be pretty technical, right? So he, whether deliberately or otherwise, he built himself up as a thought leader for aspiring guitarists in India, right? Somebody who they rightly call sir, right? He now has monetized that in a way by taking his own classes. And he once asked me long back, like, is this worth it? Like, should I start teaching classes online on Zoom or something? I'm very glad that he took my advice, and I'm guessing a lot of other people more credible than me on this matter, and actually started doing Zoom-based classes where, again, interesting enough, differential pricing or something like that. He's doing. He'll analyze a song that you wrote and stuff like that. So very nicely done. A lot to unpack over there, but this I count in the space of personal branding purely because a few lessons I think for anyone who is watching this. I think talking about what you are supposed to be good at and creating unique content around it is a great way to grow and be remembered. He's very clear about that. He knows his space of expertise and he milks it. He does a great job of creating content around it. He knows who his audience is, and it has organically built up from there over a period of time. He already had a certain amount of legacy before this as well, because even before the social media, he was a legendary guitarist for many of us who were growing up with the scene. And then once he came onto social media, he didn't do anything like I can't point to one thing he says, wow, that was, remember the time Warren did that, right? There's nothing like that. He's just slowly, steadily, every day creating content that just adds value to his fans, be it entertaining content, be it useful content. I mean, there's so much of that content marketing stuff that he just gets right. And this is another point that I really want to make. Showcasing expertise is not something that can be outsourced very easily. So if a brand wants to become a thought leader, there is they will have to spend time doing it. External parties can help only to a point. External parties can help refine, they can help provide some direction, but there's a lot of internal expertise that, I mean, without spending time, without the leadership or the experts themselves spending time on this, I don't think this is something that can very easily be outsourced. And I think I'm not sure if I made a last point of view. Oh, I did. I didn't make the last point of view, which is this takes time. I think something like this takes time. I was fortunate enough to co-host a session for the hard copy with Karthik Srinivasan on personal branding. One of the biggest points over there was, listen, this stuff takes time. You can't do this overnight. You can't get to 10,000 followers, 20,000 followers, or become a thought leader in something overnight. And I think Warren's a great example of that. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of his music, but I also think these small things that he's done, consciously or unconsciously, I think have just helped him be a personal brand. I mean, there are lessons that you can take away from that. Yeah, that's
And
me.
what's really interesting here is, and if I were to draw Indian global examples, parallels, things like that, what's happened here and what's happening here is very similar to the kind of shifts that bands and solo artists have made from their life.
Yes, yes,
Look at, say, Beyonce. She
yeah,
was Destiny's Child. Personal branding happened, and then Beyonce happened. And the reason people do this is not just so that they can become a personal brand and can start putting on more content,
yeah,
but it's because when you become a personal brand, you have the opportunity to enforce, sort of, almost imagine like in a mother brand architecture kind of thing, where
yeah,
you've got the equity that somebody like Beyonce or somebody like Rihanna brings. And then look at Rihanna, she's not even doing as much with music right now. But because that personal branding is so strong, now Rihanna has apparel, she's got makeup with Fenty, and of course, she's got her entire hip hop business going on the side.
Yeah.
But once you've built up enough equity there, then you can take it in any direction that you choose to. And that's a great way of breaking out for the Blackstrat blues thing and becoming Warren Mendoza.
Yeah.
And after that, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts going off in multiple different directions, similar to what Beyonce, Rihanna have done, and even John Mayer to some extent.
Yeah.
It's a very common stock. It's a very common brand architecture to see in the field of music.
Yeah. I can you just use brand architecture to describe Rihanna and John Mayer, which I think is the most planner thing to ever do. By the way, Adi, I don't know if you remember the first time I shared this Google document with you, where you and I were just jamming on ideas to do. My VPN was for some reason set to the UAE, so the thumbnail that you saw, if you remember, was slightly in Arabic, and now you mentioned Rihanna also. So I think we shall be under the radar very soon. We are talking about marketing over here. Okay. The next example that I have, it's an example that I myself had. Sorry, your examples are supposed to come right. Screwed up the slides. This I thought was interesting. So Metal Blade is a record label that focuses on rock and metal artists, and their vocalists were playing Dungeons and Dragons on Twitch, which I thought was so delightful. For 8 hours, these guys was, not that I haven't watched it because I'm not a fan of some of these artists, and I'm not a big D&D guy myself, but I thought the idea itself was fantastic. Which, when you get these guys in the room, you don't necessarily just need, your first instinct is like, all right, we have this talent, let's get them to make music. That seems to be like the obvious direction to go. But no, it's just about seeing them in a different context. And I don't have a bigger takeaway than that. I think just that idea itself was fantastic. Like this slightly out of context, or out of expectation, goes back to that previous point that we made at one point, something unexpected. I think that is beautiful, and what a great way to build community among these guys also. At the end of the day, so compelling content doesn't need to be obvious was my takeaway. For example, think about Hot Ones. There is, like, if you had floated the idea by itself, it just seems like a very random ludicrous piece of thing, like an interview series with increasingly spicy hot food. I mean, it's an idea that I can see some people loving and some people rejecting. I mean, if I were to pitch it to a client, or that series that Samay Raina is doing. I don't know if you've seen this, Adi. I'm not a big chess guy myself, but Samay Raina, the comedian, he's hosting online chess series.
Chess tutorials, chess games,
and that's taken off completely. So yeah, I think there is scope for this sort of slightly offbeat, putting talent who are known for one thing in an other situation completely. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to be done over there. I can think of individual examples like Kannan Gill, for example, was signed on by Duos, this Bacardi again, for this is a series that he did for Bacardi where he was like, try something new type of thing. Duos is always around that, do stuff. So he had some famous chef teach him how to cook. I bet he can't make a cheesecake, which I can now, and somebody else taught him how to dance or something like that. I thought it was pretty interesting. Yeah.
That is actually pretty cool. That's really cool. And what I really like about this is that I noticed that it's a running thing.
Yeah.
Season 1, episode 4. So these guys do it. It's not just a one-off engagement stunt. They actually do it long term, which is damn nice. And they dressed up for it, which I love.
Yeah. Nikhil also just points out, hey, Nikhil, firstly, by the way, thanks for joining in. Nikhil is one of my personal professional heroes. He mentioned that Jack Black was playing video games. That's great, right? I think that's another way I think there's a point connecting this and the previous Warren example as well. If you're an individual, I think and want to build up a personal brand, be it a musician or whatever it is, I think being open to experiences like this and not necessarily just in the space in which you operate, I think that's a very important thing. Just try out new stuff and see where the world takes you, I suppose. Shall we move on?
Yes.
Aditya, all right. What do we have next? Sorry, I clicked something. All right. Oh yes, here we go. The changing nature of albums. Wow, that's a nice one.
Yeah, so I was just going through some stuff and I noticed that.
One second. Sorry, one second.
Black.
One second.
This is my new YouTube channel, Jablinski. It's going to be bigger than
Yeah, sorry about that. I actually accidentally played the the yeah, yeah. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
So I was saying that I was going through some album tracks, seeing how long these songs are. When an album by Lil Yachty caught my eye, it has 17 songs,
Hmm.
and I was down this rabbit hole of seeing how albums music is changing, because I had this weird idea that over the past 50 years our attention spans would have changed, obviously, but
Yeah.
what are the different ways in which they're manifesting? Typically content was one of the first things, and that's when I started looking at this. And this example on the face of it seems very antithetical, right?
Yeah.
An album with 17 songs, that does not indicate a reduced attention span, but once you start looking at the length of these songs,
Yeah.
particularly some of these, I mean, a song is not even 2 minutes. It's
Yeah.
a minute and a couple of seconds, like 48 seconds. Screenshot at the bottom, the first song, there is a minute and 48 seconds. And remember, in this entire 148, you've got to go through intro, chorus, bridge, chorus, verse, however you want to structure it. And what you'll notice, and The Economist did a really cool piece with this with Spotify,
Yeah.
that the choruses of songs are hitting quicker.
Yeah.
The bass is dropping earlier than ever before to capture those pieces of attention.
Yeah.
So 15 seconds into a song and you've already got a chorus.
Hmm.
That's already hit you immediately, and this is happening because of the kind of streaming that's happening.
Yeah.
The notions of albums has pretty much disappeared.
Yeah.
It's only very few hardcore fans of very few artists will go and listen to the entire album at once in
Yeah.
one shot.
Yeah.
आजकल नहीं होता. You start looking at music as one song by one artist and then go off to something completely different. It may
Absolutely.
not even be the same genre for all
Yeah.
you know. And what John Mayer did is the entire album that he released, I think through 2019, was called The Search for Everything, and he released 4 songs at a time.
Hmm.
That's how he publicized it also. He went to Ellen to do a talk show thing, and he's like, I'm just going to release 4 songs at a time because I get exhausted when I'm listening to one full album. I don't have the space for that. So I think that's how albums are changing, and it's pretty cool because Chuck, if you go to the next slide, it's not just about reduced attention spans, but it's about maintaining the integrity of the brand experience with that attention span.
Yeah.
You can't say that 10 seconds है मेरे पास तो thumb stopper बना के अभी क्या करें.
Hmm.
The brand experience can't be compromised because the consumer doesn't
Yeah.
care. Nobody cares, very honestly,
Yeah.
about how long or short the attention span is. If your brand can deliver, great. If it can't, people have already moved on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. You have. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Sometimes when we think of our consumers, we tend to get very straight-jacketed about it. And I know that as a planner, sometimes the problem that happens is that you tend to look at consumers with the lens of either the category or the brand or the product.
Yeah.
So you're not really looking at the consumer ki unki zindagi mein kya chal raha hai.
Hmm.
And that's when you tend to miss out things like what's actually happening that's causing an effect on your brand.
Yeah.
I might see a drop-off rate in my views, but unless I notice that there are other industries, there are other competition that's eating up the share of mine, I will never amend my marketing strategy.
Yeah.
So there's dual takeaways here. That not only is you've got to reframe the kind of competition that you think you have, but also the fact that your consumers needs to be looked at as a consumer, their life, and not just as a product purchaser or a brand evangelist.
Yeah, yeah. I like the first point that you made, and the second part of that, really, without compromising the brand experience. So rather than saying that, rather than making a blanket statement that says, yeah, attention spans around the world have reduced, therefore all your content should be short. I think that's a wrong way of looking about it. And if I were to use the example of music itself, yes, if you look at Spotify's top 100 and all that, yes, all the songs are roughly 2.5, 3 minutes long, and you have music critics who are lamenting that and lamenting that. But if you look at the other side of things, underground music is getting longer than ever before. I have found a lot of, like, for example, I listen to a lot of progressive metal and progressive death, and those they don't care about length. They are going on and on and on. I've been getting into bands like Between the Buried and Me, The Ocean, and things like the Ocean's conceptual albums. They're 75 minutes long. An album has 5 songs of 10, 12 minutes each, going all sorts of terrain, and they have a huge base themselves. Again, I think, Adi, this goes back nicely to that earlier point that we were making, right? Of polarization. You have the mass that is, catering to everybody and has to comply by the system or whatever works on a platform, but there will always be these kind of niches that come up as well.
And Barsha's put up a really interesting point about obviously, like, when you have the hook, it's
Yeah,
earlier before 30 seconds, it's more likely the consumer will stay on for the remaining,
and
let's
they get paid also, right? They also get paid if it's if
yeah,
it,
per 30-second upward stream.
yeah.
But
So all the bands that I listen to, for example, they realize, hey, listen, the way we construct our songs, there's no way that we can put in the hook. Like forget, like sometimes the vocals come in after 3 minutes, the type of music that I listen to. And they realize, listen, Spotify is not the place for us. And they focus more on platforms like Bandcamp, where people like me are happy to pay them $10 per album, where they get a bigger cut of that. Fair enough. I think it's about what works for each individual platform. So similarly, if you're a brand and you're saying, oh no, we need to make thumb stopping 10-minute, 10-second content, sure, then tailor it for that, but also appreciate the fact that there might be people who are happy to see you blabber on about some particular topic for maybe
absolutely,
even as long as 2 hours. So I think it's about, again, horses for courses and not being, not necessarily like adjusting to a trend or turning everything that you do towards a particular trend that is happening. At least that's my sort of takeaway from this. But very interesting, right? Just overall how this death of album thing is happening. I don't think it's dead completely. I think in mainstream, obviously, it's dead. It's more powerful than ever in some subgenres like progressive rock, for instance. But yeah, and I don't think that's something to necessarily lament. I think it's just, I mean, people evolve, man. People move on. Every technological era, like I'm fascinated by how music has changed along with the medium of the era, right?
yeah,
When vinyl came in, it brought in a few advantages that live this thing couldn't. Like, look at how the Beatles have evolved, for instance. When they moved into the studio, when they decided after Help to become a studio band, starting with Revolver onwards, they started using. Till then, they wrote songs so that they could be played live. But once I said, screw it, we're not going to play live anymore, they could use the studio to its fullest advantage and then do stuff that sounded great on record, which would never be possible to replicate live. So I think each technology, and then the whole MTV era, where it was partially about the music, but also partially about the video that accompanies it. So yeah, I think music just evolves, culture just evolves, as it were. And interestingly, on this, to just link back to one of the earlier things that we spoke about, I read this fascinating piece somewhere that says music, whether it be rock or hip hop or whatever, is no longer the cultural driving force of the youth. It's now gaming.
yeah,
Right? So yeah, culture itself has moved on. So while the music industry, bickers with each other saying, no, 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 albums need to have the gold standard. No, 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 songs need to be 5 minutes. Youth have moved on. They're like, yeah, you guys squabble. We are going to sit and play our video games. Find things like this very interesting. All right, what do we have next? Okay, this is another slightly extension of the Black Strat Blues example that I had shared earlier on personal branding. As we keep searching out a post-rock band, a Hindi post-rock band from Ahmedabad and now Pune. And I think what they do very well is just the basics in terms of keeping in touch with people who attend their shows and things like that. I think they're not extraordinary marketers, but I think they check off all the boxes. Long back, and if there are any musicians who are listening to this, long back, one of the best writers from the scene, not that the scene has that many writers, but one of his better writers, a guy called Amit Gurbaksani, had written this checklist of what artists typically tend to get wrong. They think that it's just if they create music and put it up, that's fine. The world will now come flocking to their feet, and they find very frustrated when they're not booked for gigs and things like that. But the truth of the matter is, there's a lot more stuff that needs to be done. And a lot of it is simple. You could just have like a basic presence, have a bio, have photos, have some tracks that can be readily sent to artists. Like sometimes, and I find this amazing. Sometimes I find a band that is listed on Insider that has a show the next day or something. I'm like, okay, let me listen to their music to see whether I want to go to pay $300 and spend 3 hours of my time going and checking them out. There is no music available anywhere. They don't have stuff up on Spotify. They don't have videos up on YouTube. Like, I mean, these are such basic errors for musicians that are trying to make it today. I think as we keep searching, on the other hand, checks off all those boxes very beautifully. They send very frequent mailers. During the time of the lockdown, they made this productivity 101 playlist, which is such an as we keep searching thing. They put it out. They also do some very cute marketing things, cute or cheesy, depending on your point of view. When they released their latest album, I forgot the name of the album. When they released it, one of the this is very cool. This is actually another example of differential pricing tiers. Just attending the show itself was some 300 bucks or something. But if you buy a T-shirt, that T-shirt was 800 bucks, and that T-shirt acted as the ticket. So if you were wearing the T-shirt, you could walk into the concert. No need to print out your ticket or anything. I thought that was like somewhere between cute and cheesy, but stuff like that just makes the band seem bigger than just their music itself, which is what branding is all about in any case, right? Making the product seem bigger than just the product itself. I think these guys do a great job of doing this, and they've always done a great job of doing this. They have when they released one album and they held a listening party inside a forest or something like that to some of their fans. Their latest album, where they released it via an online listening party, where they got some fans in to send comments as well. Again, all basic, nice, simple stuff. But I think they're very savvy. They're very aware of the fact that they need to kind of do this stuff to uh, be more to their fans or give more to their fans. So I think there's a lot of takeaway from modern good artists like, as we keep searching, Pratik Uhad, whether you like his music or not. I think the guy is a brilliant marketer. Stuff like that. Yeah, that's my little takeaway from here. Sorry, that's the next. Yeah. Anything else? Anything you wanted to say on
No,
this?
I'm a big fan of their music. That's all. I really like these guys.
Yeah, I think they're good. Like they merchandise themselves quite nicely. Like I have, like when I went to an NH7 weekend and I saw people waving as we keep searching flags, I'm like, wow, that's something else. Like again, I like their music. I don't think they're the greatest band that India has ever produced, but I think they're very savvy about. They're very good at extracting more value, if I may become planner out of the stuff that they do. So yeah, very good, savvy guys. They keep doing these lives, AMAs, and all that. Again, simple stuff, but consistency over a period of time with the one odd spike activity like a contest like this. And yeah, they're pretty damn sharp. These guys, they love their fans. That's one thing that comes through. They absolutely love their fans. All right, let's move on to the next example, an experiential marketing example.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a couple of examples of mine coming up, so I'm going to power through, keeping in mind the time also
Yeah.
at hand. So this was Rita Ora. She wanted to launch an album in the middle of the pandemic, and her entire crew said that let's defer it because pandemic, social distancing, and people aren't stepping out. How do we exactly launch an album, especially at this particular location that they had picked out for the launch? What she did is that she and a couple of photographers, they went down to this place. I think this is in London, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
They shot the entire place in high def images, stitched the whole thing together, and made every single room a place to discover a song.
Wow.
And then they marketed the hell out of it. So the entire brand asset was technically that link. वो एक URL था which they took to town. And once you enter this place, the first thing you see is the image on the left. And when you click it, you're given a couple of instructions, and then you can feel you're free to move around. Uh, excuse me. You're free to move around this entire hall, couple of rooms. What's really good is that the every room looks completely different. It's got lyrics on the wall and all, and they've really thought about how different a room could look. So they haven't stuck with the fact that this is how it actually looks, but they've made use of the fact that it's online and want people to have that great experience.
Yeah.
If we move to the next slide, I have a very weird takeaway.
Very weird takeaway. Oh yes, NFT. The word has happened.
And
everyone take a shot.
yeah, exactly. I think it's just an excuse for me to talk about something super cool. Like I said, brand asset आपने build कर दिया. This is there to stay for posterity. But now what you can actually do is, if you do take that asset down, for anybody who doesn't know what an NFT is, NFT stands for non-fungible tokens. It's a part of getting onto the blockchain, and essentially blockchain does two things. It certifies ownership and it certifies authenticity. And if you can make an asset out of this entire place and sell these pieces, then whoever buys it is the only person in the world who actually owns this.
Even though other people can technically take a screenshot of it and say, hey, I have, but that guy owns owns
exactly.
it.
Exactly. And Banksy did a really cool thing. A Banksy painting got sold recently for $75,000. It was put on blockchain. The NFT was delivered to the owner, and then they live streamed the Banksy painting being burned.
Yeah.
And that's a very weird thing when you come to think of it. The original doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's a digital replica which is now considered the original, which exists and now can be transferred. Even NBA has done some cool stuff with this. So anybody who's interested, just check out what's going on in the world of NFTs.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much being written right now. Jack Dorsey's the first ever tweet has been put up for auction. Now, what does that mean? And the current price as of last week was $2.5 million. Now, what does that mean? It still means that you and I can access that tweet if we go to it, take a screenshot of it, and put it in our presentation, say this is the first ever tweet. But that guy owns it. What does that really mean? It's kind of interesting, right? I kind of think of like some people like to think of this as like baseball cards, which is what the NBA example really is, where you pay for ownership. And maybe even back then somebody would have said, hey, I can just take a photocopy of this and I would still have that. Maybe it's that equivalent. I'm pretty sure NFTs are going to become a pretty huge, are going to become a pretty huge thing. And maybe one day somebody will pay us for this video ownership, even though anyone can see it on YouTube. And this guy, an artist that I've been following for a while on Instagram, a guy called Beeple. He yesterday sold the most. I mean, his a painting that he or a collage of his work. He's been putting out art every day for the past 13 years, and the beautiful, beautiful images, surreal, slightly dark, wonderful stuff. And I've been following him for about a year and a half or so now. Because he got a little political stuff in the US, and I thoroughly enjoy that. This collage sold yesterday to an anonymous buyer for $69 million. And there was this beautiful video where, and the amazing thing is, it's Christie's that's doing this. It's not some random shit that's happening somewhere on the dark web. This is Christie's, the high priests of selling overpriced crap. That's selling this, and they put out this lovely video on Twitter of him and his family reacting when the final auction price went. So for the longest time, it was like some $10-12, and like, what the fuck is happening? And then the last 1.5 minutes, 50, 60, 69 at the last second, and everybody in the room is just shocked and screaming their lungs out. Beautiful to watch. What is NFT? Oh, heaven knows, but it's something to watch for sure in this weird future that we are going ahead. It's interesting though, because I think last year a lot of stuff was happening in games like Animal Crossing, where brands were dropping, like Marc Jacobs, for instance, released their wearable line within Animal Crossing that could be used for a limited period of time. So there is like a digital asset ownership. Like I can imagine having a digital painting or something like that, which I can keep on my Animal Crossing, even though I may never have it in real life. I guess it's just another blockchain that we need to cross. Let's move on, shall we?
Yes, let's do that.
Interesting. It's a nice example, by the way. And Divya was yesterday telling me about one artist that made customized music videos for everyone. I forgot which artist that was. If you could just mention in the comments. It was one of the big guys using Instagram filters, basically, so everyone would get a customized music videos. And I think that's, again, the lovely opportunity. Yeah, Major Lazer. Major Lazer did that. Bacardi again. Our friends at Bacardi again. Should just get Bacardi to sponsor these Bacardi marketing sessions, like Bacardi music series. Okay, moving with the audience, this is you again.
So, the next two examples are sort of linked with each other. John Mayer is one of the most marketing savvy musicians I have seen in a while. He's left his pop days behind. He's not a pop culture phenomenon anymore. But that marketing savvy has still stayed with him. Randomly, he started something called Current Mode on Instagram. He started as a joke, which went pretty big, so much so that Ellen DeGeneres, a couple of other people were really talking about it, and it were really fun sessions. And after he was done with that, he moved on to TikTok.
Yeah.
Now, there's something that's really cool about it. His audience is also on TikTok. He's talking to a completely different group. He's talking to a completely different platform. And which is where the second cool thing comes in, is that he's not just taken Current Mode and replicated it on TikTok. This guy's gone to TikTok and he's put out a video where he's saying, "Come jam with me." He's in the key of, I think, E, if I'm not mistaken, plays a lick, and then gives you about 1.5 to 2 bars to fill that in, and then he plays the next riff. So it's almost like you're jamming back and forth with John Mayer, and already there's so much of content that's spun off that. That's just testament to what a great move this was.
Fantastic. I mean, I love it when musicians just
Yeah,
keep up with technology like this. Absolutely fantastic. I love that. That's like open source music in some ways, right?
exactly. It's phenomenally cool. And the marketing takeaways from this, again, they link to the next example. One is of course move with your audience, which is a fairly simple way of looking at it. But secondly, when you see that you've got so many platforms today, but
Yeah.
every time a brand talks about going digital or doing something on digital, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, in char se aap nahi hatte.
Mm.
There's so many platforms out there. Why are people stuck to just the few?
Yeah.
That's really cool. Something interesting on the others. Maybe just push through, find a crazy idea.
Yeah.
But like I always say, it's better to think about it, explore it, and negate it, and then stick to the 4 or 5 staple platforms.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a multi-platform world, there's no reason to stick to just 4 all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is, yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
I
cool.
agree with this. But my slight discomfort with that, and I've been thinking a lot about that myself. Like move out of these 4 5. The thing is, I think even if you are a brand that does a cool thing or has a one-off idea that you do on a Twitch or a Fortnite or something like that, it could be just a one-off thing.
Yeah,
Right? You don't need a ongoing Twitch strategy or something like that. It's just a one random thing that you do which works well for that particular moment. The thing is, you still need to let people know about it.
mhm,
So how do you do that? Like, where is that base of people? Like, if you're a small brand today and if you go and do something on Twitch, for instance, sure, maybe some people will get to know about it, but what more than that? Like, I was thinking, like, you remember the time when Wendy's infiltrated Fortnite? They
yeah,
dressed up and they went and burst up all the freezer. Now that was an organic, non-paid activity, or at least that's the way they wrote the case study. But the fact of the matter is, they spoke about the fact that they were doing that on their Twitter account, which had millions of followers, which of course came because of the fact that they're a legendary brand that's been doing this for a long time, are known on Twitter for being a boisterous, etc. So I have no doubt in my mind that that activity wouldn't have got as famous as it did if it were not, ironically enough, for its following on other platforms. So I think that's a double-edged sword. I think there always will be. I think again, I'm not a huge fan of building a social media presence or something for the sake of it, but that's a challenge that brands always will have, I think.
completely agreed. Yeah, that this is more for ideas that when you're
Yeah,
thinking of
yeah,
idea, look at these 4 platforms and
yeah,
think.
yeah. It's and I think one interesting conversation that's happening in the US right now with respect to antitrust and all that is data portability, right?
Hmm,
Where they say a new social media platform can't come up because of the entrenched network effects that Facebook already has. But if now you are, like, for example, you and I are able to shift from Vodafone to Airtel easily because of MNP, right? And there are conversations in the US for this to happen with respect to digital data as well. So does that mean tomorrow, for example, if another competitor to Facebook comes up, and people are able to migrate their existing networks and content in some way to another platform, that might decentralize data ownership on, or be less beholden to individual platforms like this. If that happens, then that is going to change marketing in a huge, huge way.
that is going to be pretty cool. That's going to be pretty cool. Like the entire subject of data right now is so hot with this what you've spoken about data portability, with Google announcing Jan 2022 ki, we're going to be in a cookieless world.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was writing about the newsletter I'm putting out on Mondays. Exactly. I don't
Yeah,
think anyone's really understood what that's going to happen, and I don't think anybody outside the space of marketing advertising gives a crap about this. Cookieless future, third-party cookies, who cares? Apart from ad tech players and people who are working in marketing, nobody gives a crap about cookies. They've all installed ad blockers in any case. It's only people who work in advertising who haven't installed ad blockers because they want to see ads. Uh,
night Friday night reading.
yeah, but anyway, yeah. So I think it's very interesting that just when you think that digital marketing has hit its peak, there's so much more. Like, moment any one of these things that we speak about has come in, it's going to just explode, and it's going to throw a lot of structure out of the window. I think the way things are being done. Anyway, let's move on quickly. Interesting. I really like this. I really like this example. Which one was it? The John Mayer inviting guitars to TikTok. Yeah, I remember once. Kunal Jeswani of Ogilvy, then CDO, I think, of no, he was the head of Ogilvy one at that time when I was working there. Now, of course, the CEO of Ogilvy. He made this beautiful statement. Actually, it wasn't him. He was speaking at a conference or something, and somebody else, his regional boss or something, had come down to speak, and one of those iconic musicians, Iggy Pop, or one of those guys, had been invited to speak to an Ogilvy conference once,
Hmm.
and one of those punk, one of the icons of the punk era. I forget who it was. I don't know why I can't remember who it was. I think it was the vocalist of the Clash or something. I just can't remember who that was. Anyway, he said some, and somebody asked him, "How do you build a great brand?" And his answer was karaoke. And everybody thought, "What is he talking about?" But his point was, in to succeed in the digital era, and this amazing coming from a guy who's probably drunk or stoned half the time, who said, you as a brand, you need to create enough culture and karaoke was what he said. You need to create enough culture where your fans can then take off from it. They can then adapt that to their own purposes. I thought that is very prescient, given that he wasn't even talking in the digital era.
Yeah.
Right now, it's about creating enough of that, you know, let people take it off. And I think brands that have succeeded on TikTok, for instance, it's very interesting to see that the brands that succeed on TikTok, they succeed not because they put out great content. They gave a great hook for people to create great content from their hashtag challenge or whatever it is. Hence, swag wala dance, the Dettol hand wash challenge, and things like that. Fantastic. I think we should continue moving on. Yeah, here's the other one that you had.
Yeah, so this one is pretty cool. Okay, so Triller, for anybody who doesn't know, is a new app that's come up. It's about the music videos, and it's very skewed towards music. And just talking from a data point of view, about 85% of Triller's audience base sits out of the US,
Okay.
out of which I think most of it is skewed to hip hop and a couple of other genres. Now, what's so great about Triller is that it's become a place for music to be discovered.
Hmm.
Normally the challenge that Spotify and Apple usually have is that how do we get you to discover more and more music, which is where Spotify's algorithm comes in. But the thing is that people tend to stick to playlists.
Yeah.
In the entire industry, music discovery was one part of the content consumption journey, if you will, that was missing. So when artists just to delineate that as creation, discovery, recommendation becomes part of subculture, pop culture, and mass culture.
Yeah.
That's typically the spectrum that it follows. So everything was happening. Artists were creating a lot of music. Whatever music came out and was discovered, that made its way to pop culture and mass culture. But the thing is, the proportion of the number of artists who were creating music and the people who were discovered was just crazy short. Yeah, that's the interesting gap that Triller fills. It makes artist discovery that much easier and that much cooler. That's number one about Triller. And I just realized that, Chuck, I think on the next slide, I have Galti, I think I've replicated the previous slide. Can you just
Okay,
check?
that's okay. We'll
So
make the point again.
yeah, I'm just going to make the same points. That's one of the cool things about this entire piece, about where does your product, where does your brand fit into the entire, if you're say content, in the content consumption stream. Where is your brand making a difference? Where are these apps situated, and what do these apps specifically do? How can you use Triller really interestingly? And secondly, Chuck, what you were saying just a little bit earlier, that your base is going to come out of one of these platforms, whether it's an Instagram or a Facebook, which is why when this dude John Legend, he launched his song "You Move, I Move," he posted on Facebook that he's got a "You Move, I Move" challenge on Triller.
Ah,
Then he went and told people, "Ki ye karo, ye karo, ye karo."
yeah, yeah.
That kind of cross platform promotion can, it's interesting, of course, but it's not unheard of.
Mm.
What makes it really interesting is that you've understood what the strength of these platforms are. Facebook will give you that crazy reach, will give you that kind of data about audience demographics, audience analytics. And
Yeah,
once you get to Triller, your music is just thrown open to discovery, and therefore you get to be a part of culture that much more quicker.
yeah, yeah,
Streams also, because Triller makes sure that if you're a part of somebody else's challenge, then the original artist gets paid.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
not even just the number of streams, which
Very,
is a
very
crazy
interesting.
differentiator.
Very interesting. Although another thing to also keep in mind and watch out for is that the big players themselves are trying to do features like this as much as possible, right? We've seen moves from Twitter recently, where it's acquired review, for instance, the newsletter platform. It's making moves that are trying to make it more like a Cameo or a Patreon, for instance. I can imagine tomorrow, for instance, a Spotify tomorrow replicating or buying out perhaps even the same feature that you just spoke about. So it's worth also keeping in mind that some of these bigger players might just end up adopting or acquiring these features themselves. but I think that was too specific with respect to music. All right, what do we have? Last, I think these are just a few random examples that I have. No takeaways, really, just some very interesting examples that I have for you. Oasis is one of my favorite bands, and I am absolutely unashamed to say that. And I will go on record saying that if there was one band that I hope would reunite, I would choose Oasis over Led Zeppelin. Anyway, that controversial statement aside, and zero, and also zero. I hope Sriket is not here. That he'll unfriend me immediately. So Oasis employs buskers to play the tunes, not digital in nature, but I thought again this is a pretty cool thing. What else do we have here? I actually thought Pratik Kuhad's Kasur video was very well done. Again, not the biggest fan of his music, but I think what he did over here, for those of you who don't know, I mean, the unlikely event that an Indian indie music videos got 8.5 million views, and there's still people who haven't seen it. Basically, got people to do live streams of themselves, and then he'd give them prompts. Think of your first love, think of your first kiss, whatever, whatever, and then he stitched all that together. And it was an editing masterpiece. Everyone talks about that Nike ad that was a masterpiece in editing last year, but I think this was also very, very nicely done. So, excellent example. This. Radiohead, yes, Radiohead, a band that we visited a while back for deleting the social media presence. In 2007, they created a stir when they released. I remember this was a time when digital music was still sort of like this. Hey, like, is it free? Should we download and torrent it? Should we pay? Like, what's the scene with respect to this? Whole thing. CDs was still somewhat of a thing, but dying out. They released one of their albums in Rainbows online and said people can pay whatever they want for it. It's the first time an experiment like that ever happened, and that really started out ideas like Bandcamp, etc., where you are free to pay whatever you want. The artist will set a rate, and then you are free to pay over that if you want to support the artist. One of the first ever examples of this, very widely discussed, and there's still the jury is still out as to whether this worked for the band or not. Because while not too many people, while if you look at it on a per dollar rate, they didn't get too much for this. But what it interestingly ended up doing was because the digital album was free-ish, it actually made the price of the physical album or the box set or whatever it is that much more of a collector's item. So more people ended up buying, or rather, a lot of revenue came from that. It's very interesting how these dynamics sometimes play each other out. Foo Fighters turned 25 last year. Dude, Foo Fighters has turned 25. Like, how did this happen? Like, didn't Nirvana just break up like 10 years ago or something? Like, anyway, so Foo Fighters have turned 25 and they put up this beautiful website that's collecting fan stories from around the world. Sadly, there's only one story from India. Iconic rock band, and one thing I love about them is how they keep getting young fans up on stage and playing with them. If they came to India, that would be a riot. So here's an example of that. Here's a screenshot of that. I think I have a last 2 or 3 examples over here. Oh yes, it's 2 of my favorite examples coming. Those of you who haven't seen this experience, you must. So Bob Dylan's "Like a Rolling Stone" has been voted as one of the greatest songs of all time, let alone rock songs. It was released in 1967 or 68 or something like that. And 50 years later, it never had a music video. 50 years later, Sony Music came out with this amazing interactive video, which is still live on video.bobdylan.com, which is essentially 50 different music videos like a TV channel. So this, for example, shows like he's actually singing like a Rolling Stone while it happens. When you click these buttons, you move over to a weather channel. And it's very weird because you have the two anchors that say, yeah, once upon a time you dress so fine, and then you can, and it becomes a tennis match, it becomes anime, it becomes slightly adult content, it becomes all sorts of things. It's beautiful, such an incredible experience. So this is recommendation number one in case you want a bit of music after this. Recommendation number two is this, which I sent on the video, which I sent on the mail yesterday. It's a fantastic hack that these guys do. So the Academic is a small indie rock band, I think from Ireland or something. And they realize that when you do a Facebook live, there is a gap, a ever so small delay, which really doesn't change the experience all that much. But they what they did is they ended up hooking their Facebook live to a projector, and then as a result of that, they ended up creating a loop. So first the guy would come in and sing AO, and then he would just leave, and then that AO would continue looping for the rest of the song. And then one by one, a musician would come in and add one bit to it. It is incredible to watch. Like one of the most spectacular things I have ever seen a band do. And I think it was very ballsy because they had to do it live as well. Right. So if they screwed it up, it's not like they could start all over again and do a take two. This was a live thing. It was also very ballsy of them to do it, and they pulled it off beautifully. And I think that's, oh, is that, oh, yes. And of course, how can we not talk about this? The Eminem AR show. Marshall Mathers, he did this incredible augmented reality experience at Coachella. In many ways, shows what the future of concerts and things like that will be. And it's interesting that a lot more concert stages or just venues by themselves are adapting to the fact that people are going to have their phones out, and trying to make their stages more Instagram worthy, or just, so all right, you can't fight this, so let's try to make it a better experience. I thought, something like that was a pretty cool thing. I think that's about it. Yes, that is all. Wow. We have spent a fair bit of time. Thank you everyone for sticking this far. Or Tenerife, there are a couple of questions that have come in, Adi, strangely enough. Let's see if we can take any of them. Sarah asked one long back, why are these examples more common abroad? Hardly see anything crazy in India. That is right. Um, I want to put it down to lack of imagination on the part of brand managers, but I don't think it's as simple as that. Adi, you have dealt with, or you are dealing with clients a lot more than I am. You've seen a lot more of these crazy examples now. So, what's your take on this?
I think it's a combination of two things really. I don't think it comes down to their smarts, because it's glib to say that they aren't smart enough. You've got,
Yeah. That I agree. I think there are smart people everywhere. Yeah, this
yeah,
I agree.
but I think there's a lot of or perhaps risk taking appetite is not very high, which is
Yeah.
something like which is what something like this really requires. So unless we culturally are able to get out of that mindset, we won't be taking this kind of absolute just balls out risk.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, a lot of these are budget heavy. Some of these, of course, aren't, but a lot of these are. And when your budgets are tight, you're going to try and stick to proven methods that work.
Yeah.
This is why the one-off crazy things that happen, they get so much attention.
Yeah.
क्योंकि वजह ज्यादा होता नहीं है.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot more of these crazy examples, be it like a very wild social media post or an activity coming out from startups more than the big entrenched players. Like Swiggy's Voice of Hunger, for instance, is a campaign that I would probably cite in my top 10 marketing campaigns or digital marketing campaigns, at least of all time. Right. And I think that was as spectacular an idea as any of the ones that I have seen, like a Wendy's or a Burger King do, for example. You're right. I think there is a little, everything, partially money, I guess, but partially mostly that risk capital. And there's always this thing of, okay, who has done it first? They want to be innovative, but they want a reference as well. That's the common complaint that we always have. Somebody asked, do people pay for Taylor Swift? I would not like to comment on that. I do not want to turn this into a genre war sort of thing. I like to be very egalitarian about these kind of things. All we know is there clearly are people who are paying for Taylor Swift a lot more than they are for many other genres. Warren is a legend. There's no arguing with that. In terms of personal branding, the Top Gear presenters branched out doing other things. Very good example from Nikhil. Barsha's question, I believe we kind of answered. What is starting price for this video? Oh, he was asking about our video, is it? Nikhil, for you, we will let's talk later. He said a lol. So all right, and somebody had asked a question on the Q&A, which we'll take and we'll probably close after that. As a content creator myself, how do I find the value of my post, or how do I find the amount to charge? I agree there should be a paywall, but what's the value of content? Such a tough one, is it? Like, it's a question that the media industry has been around the world has been grappling for well over 2 decades. So I doubt that you and I are going to come out with an answer right now. Any thoughts on that, Adi? I'm trying to think of a answer that. Might.
I don't have a coherent answer. I think the reason is that it is a very, very tricky thing to do.
Yeah.
Start underpricing yourself, and people think you're not good enough. You start overpricing yourself and lose clients, right? But I think it's always handy to find a reference point as to who does something similar in my industry that I can use as a benchmark, as a reference point, and then try and move up and down from there. But that's as much as I can say off the cuff for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, let me try to take a stab at this because I think to some extent I have monetized some content, right? So, like the examples I have is I run a newsletter which has some interesting digital marketing or just interesting digital stuff on a weekly basis, and I charge 300 rupees a year for that, which I look at it this way. What is something that I would pay for? That's my simple benchmark. Now, there probably is a lot more scientific ways of going about it, but I am a very lazy guy and I don't want to sit and interview other people, see and arrive at a perfect model or anything like that. I said, listen, if this were to show, if somebody were to, like if Aditya were to offer this to me and say, like I'm pricing at 300, yeah, okay, 300 is something I might pay. 500, sure, I would still pay 500, but maybe that's maybe a little too much. I'm unsure about what I'm going to get. Start off with 300. Unless your income depends on it, I think you have the freedom to price it at whatever you want. 300 seems like a happy point. I've got about 600, 700 people who have paid me for it. And I think that's definitely made it worth my while to churn out that newsletter every month. It becomes a little more tricky if it is your sole source of income. Like for example, if you're a freelancer, that's another question that I always get. How do you price your services? Again, I'm a very lazy guy, and I think that's not a very bad place to start with because when you're lazy, you look at the Occam's razor and you go for the easiest possible way to get started. So for me, for example, how I did it is I looked at how much I was earning in my previous job. I said at the end of 1 year of freelancing, I need to earn exactly that. Worked backwards, did some number of hours calculation, saying that okay, I have arrived at, for example, 1,000 rupees an hour I should be making. Right. So if I am commissioned for a blog post, for instance, if I think it's going to take 2 hours to write that, I don't care what the industry is charging. I really don't give a crap about industry standard. Right. What is it for me? All right. So I need to make at least 2,000 rupees out of this. Otherwise, I'm going to be at loss. So I'll start with 5,000, negotiate it down to 3,000 or something like that. That's my way of approaching. It's worked well for me so far in 2 years. Other people will balk at that and say, no, no, you have to charge industry standard. If it's the going price is 10,000 and you're charging 2,000, it prices everybody else out of the market. Yeah, but also keep in mind that I don't want to be doing only that, right? I won't, eventually I will also start charging more and more once I realize I can do that. So I think it's a matter of just starting somewhere. I'm a fan of this. I'm a fan of just putting yourself out there, giving yourself enough of a sandbox to make a mistake so that if it like some stuff goes wrong, and this I work with clients also this way. Sometimes I work with clients who don't know how much to charge for a particular service. I say, all right, let's go into this with an open mind. Let's take a period of a month or 2 months. Let's make all the mistakes over there because we'll figure out. Okay, you said we need 5 things. It's going to end up being 10 things, or it could end up being 2 things. And then at the end of the 2 months, we sort of figure, all right, this is how we properly take it forward. I'm a fan of just starting out and figuring out figuring out from there. Also, when you consume a lot of content from others, you also get a sense of it, right? Like for example, uh, uh, Scroll, the news publication for which I have a lot of respect because of my political leanings, they charge 1,000 rupees a month, 1,000 rupees a year for all the journalism. And I'm like, holy shit! Like, what occasion do I have to charge anything more than that for sending some random marketing stuff on a weekly basis?
Yeah.
And so I guess all those things at the same time, there are other people who have mailed me and said, dude, what you're sending out is great, you should be charging at least 2,000 bucks a year for it. Sure, I could do that, but I don't know, many of these things are very, very individual choices as well. I think if you consume a lot of content, you have a great reference point like Adi said, but I think at the end of the day, it boils down to what you feel it is worth. And I think what you would pay for it is a great way to start, and then work your way up or down depending on how the market reacts, as we say.
I think that's another really nice formula of doing it as well, Chuck. That just backtrack to the numbers that you need for your base.
Yeah.
You start accounting for the fact that whether this is my sole income, whether this is part of my income, things like that, and that would really help.
Yeah.
If we answered that question, but I hope we did.
I hope we did. Yeah. I will answer. I'll put it as answer live. Done. All right, guys, that's about it. Next time, I suppose, Adi, we should talk about brand again. Whether brand is important, whether brand is making a resurgence again. That's something that I'd love to have us think about as well. Yeah, all this goes back to the same issue about brands monetizing their content too, like Nikhil says. Great point. Actually, I do think brands are going to start monetizing. Again, have a strong brand, you will be able to do stuff like this, right? Okay, awesome. I think we should call it a close. We tried to keep this to 1 hour, but we ended up talking for 1 hour 40, which I guess is okay. Thanks, guys, for joining in, and to whoever is here for staying all the way till the end. And we'll see you sometime in April. You will get to know. I'll send out a mail as always. And yeah, if you have any feedback on this, anything you'd like to see, anything you'd like to see less of, do let us know, and we will take it ahead.
Thank you so much, everyone. This was fun. Bye.
Yep. Bye, Adi. Also, let me go check out some Post Malone now.
Yeah.